It is really shiny. Okay. All right, guys. So welcome to JPES Talks. When I created my tutoring business, I never planned on making a YouTube channel. I never even thought about it. All I did was watch videos of like random things and like Dave Ramsey podcasts on YouTube. And then I woke up a few months ago and decided I wanted to try this. And I thought people from like my high school are gonna look and say, "That's so weird. Why is she doing that?" But I keep wanting to do it, so we're doing it. Here we go. Okay, so for everybody who's watching, I've got a couple of tutor friends with me. Let me see. Here we are. So how about you guys introduce yourself? So ladies first, Jenny.
I'm Jenny Keller. I am the founder and biology tutor for Wise Science Tutoring. I have a wonderful business partner who's the chemistry tutor. She couldn't be with us today because she's working, but hi.
Thanks, Jenny. All right, Robert, tell us about yourself.
Hi, my name is Robert Travers. I am the owner and founder of Main Street Math Tutoring, and I am the Main Street Math Tutor.
Okay, so we've got math and science and ELA right here. So it's kind of, I'm really glad you guys are tutoring something different because probably several times throughout the year, people will say, "Do you tutor math?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, please no." And I usually don't have anybody to recommend because this is pretty much a solo position. Like once I left the classroom, I really didn't have any like comrades to talk to, or I was pretty much on my own. So I'm glad now that I've met you guys through our tutoring group and that I can recommend you guys to them. So as people come in to watch, and as people will watch the recording later, so that'll be okay too. Let's go ahead and talk about why you're teaching your subject area. So Jenny, why? Tell us a little bit about your background. Like you say science, and science is something that I always kind of liked, but I never really felt like I could do anything with it because I'm like, I can read and write. I don't know what to do with science. I probably needed a science tutor, honestly. So why do you tutor science, and what is your background in that area?
So I actually started when I went to college. I was going to be so many things. I started off as an English major, then I went to forensics, and then I was a biotech major, and then I met a wonderful, wonderful teacher, as we probably all have that one teacher that stood out for us. And she was my biology teacher in college. And I fell in love with biology and all things science because of her. But I think even before that, when I was a kid, I loved like the Magic School Bus and
yes.
And things like before Bill Nye the Science Guy, there was a guy named Mr. Wizard. And I used to watch him on the local Channel 8, which is the public like the public assets channel here. And when I got home from school, that was the first thing I watched. So I've always had a love of science underneath, but I think it was until she brought it out in me that and I actually worked for her as her in-class tutor while I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
And that led me to a career in tutoring at the college. I still work part-time at that same college. I've been there for 15 years now. And I decided I wanted to go out on my own. So I worked there, and I'm starting my business on the side.
Yes, that is so awesome. All right, same question for Robert. Robert, what is it that you're up to right now? I know you said math, so how are you doing that? And why did you choose that subject? We may have a bit of a delay on Robert's end.
So I want to. That's okay. I can still hear you. Anyway, okay. So I've always been good at math. Math has always been my thing since childhood. But like I had this one teacher in 6th grade who really inspired me, and I still think he's my favorite teacher of all time. So come high school, I noticed that people started to come to me with math questions. And I guess I could say I started tutoring before now. But I was aspiring to be a math teacher for, again, since childhood. And I think when I went into the classroom, I really noticed that maybe I'm not a great classroom teacher, but I noticed one-on-one, I was absolutely phenomenal. So I thought to myself, why continue doing something I like, but I don't really want to do, and instead go out on my own. And my dad was a business owner himself, so I thought if he could do it, why not me?
That's so incredible that you said that, because I don't know about the two of you, but I know we talked a little bit before this, but I did start out in the classroom, and that was the only way I knew how to start teaching. I mean, I grew up loving reading and writing, and so I thought, well, maybe I'll be an author, but I didn't really feel inspired to write. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I might still do that later. But yeah, the classroom was incredibly difficult, and that really is leading to my next question. Is I'm asking about if you spend any type of time in the classroom. I want to know about it. So whatever you're willing to reveal, you can do. And so why are you not there now? And so Jenny, for you, I would say, since you haven't been in there, what kept you from ever trying that out, even as a substitute teacher? Because for me, believe me, I had that experience. I sub-taught. I was in the classroom, and I felt that it was incredibly difficult, like harder than it should have been, because I mean, for all the reasons you've heard of, there were so many chores, so many things to balance, the behavior, all the meetings you have to do, all the people you have to please. And then I wasn't great at technology either, not back then. So you have to balance the grades book and all of that. And it was really hard, and I had a lot of hard knocks. Like, believe me, there are a lot of great kids and such, but I had some hard experiences, and I didn't ever really want to talk about them. I wanted everyone to think, "Hey, I had my first job. I'm doing great. I'm making actual money instead of whatever money I had from a smaller job." And I definitely had a pride issue, big time. So, Robert, why don't you tell us about classroom experience? Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, what really at first, I taught at a small little private Catholic school, and I really enjoyed it. But some of the things that really bugged me and made me want to leave was that I was teaching out of a curriculum that was older than I was. That had to do it was either its way or no way, so I really didn't have much in the way of creative freedom to teach how I wanted to.
Yeah.
Student behaviors, though, were absolutely atrocious.
Even in the Catholic school?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
But,
well.
But and then there was one conversation I had early on in the year where I sat down. One of the parents called a meeting with me and told me that I was artificially inflating her child's scores.
Oh, okay.
And I'm thinking to myself, really? I mean, I've heard people say, "Why isn't my kid doing well?" But it floored me.
So you're inflating. Usually it's the other way around. Usually it's you're not doing enough, or my baby would never make that kind of grade, or can you give them makeup work? That's what I would expect.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, something like that. I was absolutely just floored.
Huh. Were there any good experiences in the classroom?
Yeah, there were a lot of good experiences that I had in the classroom. My favorite was when so we have testing here in the state of Maine 3 times a year, once at the start of the year, once in the middle of the year, and once at the end of the year. And going into that winter test, I was thinking to myself that I would be happy if I saw that they weren't doing worse, because I was a first year teacher and I didn't really have too much of a system down yet. So I get the results back, and I saw that I averaged about a +5 boost to their scores. I'm thinking to myself, that's really good.
Yeah.
Especially for a class where I had heard all year that they weren't good at math, and some of them weren't.
Sure.
But when I saw that, I would get them to improve. And, but never. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was clicking on something. Don't worry about it. All right, go ahead.
No, sorry about that. Anyway, so one of the other things I really enjoyed was how most of my students weren't as bad. And when I told them that they were leaving, I literally had 2 of them coming to my classroom begging me to stay. And honestly, so most of those students I miss to this day.
Yeah, it is kind of eerie. I definitely have had a similar situation. We had testing our first year, and it really same thing too. And I mean, I remember I had kids saying, "Oh, we don't want you to leave," and it happened more than one time. And I'm just like, well, if you could change a lot of things about education, I'll stay. You don't leave because of the kids. I mean, they challenge you, but it's really the system and the adults that make it hard. But anyway, we could do a whole other video.
The backstage politics.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, and the thing was, the year, and this could be with a lot of things. The year would start out great. Everybody's in a good mood. You have like new teacher orientation. You have full house, which is exciting but draining. And you spend like hours decorating your room, getting ready, or meeting all the people. Hi, hello. And teachers, they talk a lot, so you're like overwhelmed. And then the year just kind of would do this just throughout the year, and you're exhausted, and you're like, why is this so hard? I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist. So shouldn't this be easier? No. So what about when it comes to, let's see, I wanted to talk about like good teaching stories. Jenny, what are some things you've done like with teaching, like at the college level, right? I want to get it wrong. Okay. College science. I remember going in and I wanted the easiest science because I didn't plan on having a career in that field.
Right.
And I remember I said, there was a class called Geology of National Parks. And I thought, I love national parks. I'll take that class. Guess what? It was difficult. The guy was not the most fantastic communicator. It was hard.
Which is when they're actually a scientist, they don't have like a background in teaching, which at the college level, that's very common because they retire from their science job and then they teach. So that's very common. A lot of students tell me that. Like, my teacher is not a teacher.
I had a math teacher like that, and I barely got through college algebra. I mean, I can smile now. Back then, I wasn't smiling about it. Jenny, who have you helped with for their science classes?
So I've had a lot of people come through we call them tutoring labs where I work. And one that I remember, it was outside of so we have respiratory care and nursing programs at my college, but we don't tutor for those. They have their own inside tutors for those programs. But one of them had a traumatic brain injury and she couldn't like organize her information. And another one of my specialties is study skills. I used to be a tutor trainer as well. So I know all about the study skills that you have to teach the tutors in order to help the students. So I actually got to help her organize her information so that she could pass the class. And now she's a respiratory care therapist and she still contacts me and it's great, and now anytime there's a student with a brain injury or something, an executive function skill that they need help with, they send them to me, even though I'm a science tutor, but I have that study skills knowledge that they can come to my lab and I can help them. So it's very rewarding.
That's why you do it. It's not because, oh, I'm good at science, which you are, but you do it for so many more reasons. Now, this is the second time this month I've heard of executive functioning, and that's not something I'm trained to really, I guess, to understand or know about. Do both of you know what executive functioning is and what to do about that?
Well, executive functioning, I've just started calling it that now that we've been in this tutor group, because actually I've worked with students who have traumatic brain injuries. So they've, hit their head, or something has hit their head, or they've been in an accident. And so they have a frontal brain injury, and they don't process information the same. I didn't know it was called executive functioning until we started doing this. I just know that they had problems organizing information, and they need to organize it differently. So I didn't even know that it was called executive functioning until recently. So thank you, tutoring group.
So it's not can we call it disability, or was it understood as that, but now what exactly does it mean?
I don't know if it was called that at first, but I don't know if it was classified as a disability, but they do get people who have that do get what they call here in Texas, they may not call it that. They get a 504 or 501, I can't remember what it's called, but they get extra time on tests, accommodations. So they get extra time on tests, extra time to do classwork, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it has some kind of disability component. But the student that I was trying to help, that I was talking about earlier, she couldn't even do what she needed to do with the extended limits. So we had to, because she actually had an air conditioner unit fall on her head.
Jeez.
Yeah. So we had to learn how to color code things and stuff so that she could do it.
Wow.
And she did. And it was great.
Well, it's good that you can do that, because a lot of people probably think, well, I can't understand very fast, so I better not do it.
Right.
And I just don't get things. I mean, that's the worst. And you think,
right. And I have students like that. And I know that Robert has had it. I'm not a math person, right? I don't do math.
I say that. Or I used to.
I have it too. I'm not a biology person. I'm just taking this class because I have to, because I have to have the science. And for some reason, they say biology is the easiest of the sciences.
No, I don't think so.
Well, I'm not sure there is an easiest of them when you're at the college level. But if you're trying to get an associate's of science, you have to take a science. So you're stuck with one of us. But you have them at every level, no matter what. And I'm sure you're like, oh, I just don't write. I'm not a writing person, or, whatever it is. There's all the tutors have heard that. All the teachers have heard that. And I'm not fond of math myself, but in chemistry, there's a lot of math. And in physics, there's a lot of math. So I know how to do that math. Don't ask me to do anything outside of that math. I took statistics twice for my degree.
It's hard enough to say that word, much less do it, right?
Yeah. And I had to take 2 different statistics classes. So I wasn't happy about that. I'm like, I've already taken one. Why do I have to take another one? But anyway, so the fact that she was driven to do this, even though her brain was telling her she couldn't, it really makes me, appreciate. And that's why I wanted to help her so much, because I have those students that just come in and they're like, look, I'm not a biology person. And they kind of just give up on you. And it's up to you to pull out that motivation, where she was totally driven, ready to go. And so you just wanted to go with her. Those are the students that make everything else worth it.
That's what I would call a success, because I've had students that I like, but if I feel like they're not bringing enough to the table, I feel like we sort of turn a curve. And I'm just telling them about life. Like I'm like, well, if I can't make you a great reader or writer overnight, let me tell you about some other things that I like to talk about. Like one day, I also in the summer I've done driver's ed, like actually not the classroom, but like in the cars. And we were talking about pricing and all that, and the guy said he didn't know what financing a car meant. And I was so excited. I'm like, oh, let me tell you what it means. And I like imparting that knowledge, because he wasn't like a regular student of mine, but I just like to I don't know, show people things, even if I'm like, if somebody doesn't know something, if I'm there with them one-on-one, they're going to learn it. Like I want to tell it now. Robert, what are some success stories you've had in the math world?
I actually have one that I tell people all the time about. I was student teaching before while in college in my senior year back in 2014, I think. Anyway, so I had this one student. For the first half of the class, she didn't show up. She didn't do her homework. She didn't do any of that, and I got the I don't like math. Yeah. And I mean, if I had a dollar for every time I heard that, I would be tutoring for free. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so a few months pass and we call a meeting to discuss what's going on, and she is literally in tears because she's worried she's not going to graduate. Oh, yeah. And I tell her, and I told her I could deal with her if she did all her work and stayed after for tutoring, then I would see what I could do to get her to pass. And it was a clear night and day difference. She worked super hard to get the concepts, asked me almost every question you could imagine. And at the end, come the last day of finals, she ended up passing by a half point.
Whoa, nice point. That's amazing.
And I thought to myself, and she came up to me at the end of the term, and she was saying, "Thank you, Mr. Travers, for doing this for me." And I told her, I didn't do this. You did this.
Oh my gosh, I feel like crying.
I know. It's got me in the feels.
Yeah. Oh, so that's great. So you never forget that student,
Of course not.
No, that's why we're doing this. And sometimes you'll have students who they click with you and they like you and you're like, why? And I've had students who I know I was firm with, especially like back in the classroom days. You're just like, I feel like, oh, they probably don't like me, or we've had some one-on-one discussions that were quite firm, or I've called their mom and told them, hey, he's not doing his work. And then that kid they see you out somewhere in town, they're like, oh, hey, and they say your name and they're happy to see you. I'm like, hey, and that's a really good feeling too. So there is some of that aspect about the classroom that I do miss. But with all that said, let's talk about, the main reason I created this video for us today. Since we are working so much more online, why should a parent hire an online tutor for their student? I teach some in person still, but with people having to transition to online, like why? I think parents and students want to know what's the benefit, because can't they just, figure it out on their own? How do you answer that question? Jenny, why don't you go first?
I think one of the biggest benefits is just the flexibility, because you have more time to plan a session because you're not in a car driving. Well, in Houston, it's a huge town. So I could be on this side of town and have an appointment all the way across town, get stuck in traffic. I'm late, where if I'm at home and this is my office that I'm moving into, so don't look behind me, when I can sit here and I can plan, and I'm here all the time. I'm always on time because I don't leave this spot from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Well, except to eat. And I think that's a huge benefit for both me, because I'm not frazzled when I'm, trying to plan something, and for the parents and their students, because I'm not frazzled. And when I get to the appointment, I'm more focused. I'm able to concentrate. I'm not like, oh my God, let me tell you about that traffic, that guy who cut me off and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I just think the flexibility of, hey, I need to move my appointment 10 minutes. Okay, no problem. I was sitting here anyway. Those kinds of things are, I think, a huge benefit.
What are some ways we can help students online, like from the computer? Because I know sometimes, like in a previous live stream I did with my sister, who is a teacher, I said, I remember making physical copies for the classroom, and if the copies are skewed in any way, or if I run out, or if the back is blank, or something's wrong, I can't leave the classroom and make new copies unless I have a co-teacher. And even then, if you lose that time. Where online, I've found that as long as you're prepared, you can go and click on something else. So why might it be better to have that online back and forth? Robert, your turn.
So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Why is, or what are the benefits of tutoring online versus being in person?
I think especially now with the whole pandemic going on, I know for my dad's business at least, he's had trouble getting into people. People are not as welcome with strangers being in their homes right now. I think that the ability for us to do tutoring online helps them know that, hey, I'm not gonna have any chance of getting the virus from the tutor. But also, again, it goes back to that matter of convenience where you as a tutor don't have to drive anywhere, but the parent and child don't have to drive anywhere either.
Have you guys ever tutored in a library, like anywhere outside of your home? And yes. Do you guys have libraries where we have a few good ones around here, they're not as fancy as I would like. Like a couple years ago, we visited the Boston Public Library on a vacation, and that was probably the most beautiful building I've ever seen in my life. Like, there's actually a picture of it on my website, which is, unfortunately, that's not my house or my office, but I put it there in a little on one of the pages just to show this is what I like. This is my ideal. But anyway, it's meeting in a public place. It used to be great. As long as I would have to call the day of. Let's say I'm tutoring someone at 5 o'clock. I'd have to call right when the library opened and reserve that room. Otherwise, they would fill up, because there are other tutors and teachers who would go to that library and tutor after school. I mean, it can be quite busy. So if you don't hurry up, and it's like you're always scrambling and hustling for a spot. I guess online, you're not having to hustle for your room, your office. Like I've worked hard to set up this office, and no one's in here borrowing it from me. Like, this is my space, but it took a while to earn the space. Like I had to, spend some time working on it. So yeah, the online is great. I had a couple of parents who still wanted their kid to be to work with me in person, because they say my child is getting quite a bit of screen time. But I find that when I am in person, we're still using the computer. I realized, you know what? It's more efficient now to just use the computer, and I don't really feel guilty about it anymore, because it's a good tool. So what would you guys have to say to a parent who asked you, can you please work in person with my student for those reasons I mentioned?
So down here, or I don't know where y'all are in relation to me, in Houston right now, there's a big push because schools haven't gone back face-to-face yet. They're still virtual learning. And there's a big push they want you to be the babysitter, not the tutor. So they phrase it as tutoring, but they want you to come and make sure their kids are working.
Yeah.
Not actually help them with the work, just make sure they're working. And they want to pay you high school babysitting rates. And while I don't have a problem, because I have my mask, I have, all the things that I need, and I would be happy to help out with tutoring, not babysitting. My child is 21 years old. I've done that part. I don't need, I'm not to sound stingy, but $10 to $15 an hour to risk getting COVID is not something I want to do,
No, no. I mean, I remember when $10 to $15 an hour was amazing.
Right, when I was a high schooler.
Oh, that would have been a lot for high school. No, I was my
Right.
first job. I was working at a gym, $5 an hour, and I was happy.
Oh yeah, my first job was like $5.50 an hour, and it was amazing. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. What about Robert? What are you doing as far as like, what's a tool that or have you used any tools yet for teaching math online? Have you gotten to kind of play around with some of the stuff we've learned about this year?
I have a little bit. I haven't had any students yet online per se, but one of the things that I really enjoyed when I was online, when I did do when I was in the class, something called Prodigy. And what it is it's like a RPG kind of game for the kids where you can track what you can input different things that you had just taught in the day, and they would battle creatures, and in order to win they would have to answer questions correctly.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Make it like a video game. They'll do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh gosh. I remember learning my times tables from little computer games, and that was back in like late 90s, and that was fun. So I can imagine it's like even more elaborate now. I mean, I probably need to be playing those games now, just in case. Okay, so speaking of, so I try not to talk about the COVID, but it's just like you can't speak to anybody without it coming up these days. So so how has that affected your career and or your personal life? Who wants to speak on that?
I'll go. So I was I still am a college tutor. And we were tutoring in a very tiny lab, not even as big as my office here. And we were seeing hundreds of students a semester, thousands of students a semester.
Wow.
And we are now online, and our attendance or our numbers have dwindled because either we're not getting the word out enough, which I don't think is the case, or students are just college students are just so fed up with doing everything else online that is bleeding over into, well, if the class is like this online, then the tutoring is going to be the same, which I think I fight a little bit down here with the parents sometimes about like what you're getting at school is not what you're going to get with a tutor.
That is tough. I do have a couple of my students. I feel like I say that I have more than two, I promise, but two of them are taking virtual class, and when I'm helping them, sometimes they'll have homework questions and they'll show me their online portal, and I'm like, oh gosh, it's overwhelming to me because it looks different than this other student.
Right.
One uses Google Classroom, another uses something else. And so I'm like, oh, do I have to learn? I feel like I'm supposed to learn how to navigate it. And then half the time they know more than I do. It's just more like, what's the bottom line? What do we need practice with? And for me right now, I'm seeing that, kids are learning the computer. That's awesome. But guess what? They're not writing by hand. And when they're young, they might click around and be awesome at the computer, and then, oh, well, there's taking, 5 to 10 minutes writing a sentence. I'm like, why is this taking so long?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, oh yeah, they've been out of school since February, so they probably haven't written anything by hand other than their name or some drawings.
Right. I was tutoring my nephew at the beginning of this semester, and he's 7, and he couldn't but down here last year or 3 years ago, so in his kindergarten year, he had Hurricane Harvey, which shut down everything. Then last year was the name we shall not say, COVID. And then this year it stayed. So he's never had a normal school year. So they're all behind. His cohort is behind in writing. They're behind in reading. So that's something that our school districts are dealing with the young, very young, the second graders. They're not even reading at a kindergarten level right now because of natural things that are happening. It's not anyone's fault, because the schools were flooded with Harvey, and then everything shut down.
Well, see, I have some family in Houston too, and I remember like it just like everything happens. You know, it used to be when there is a disaster, it still goes away. You know, it doesn't last that long. Now, some people's lives are affected, but no matter what, you can get kids back in some other school. You know, if like disaster strikes, no matter what, okay, we'll put them in some other school. We'll get them somewhere temporarily. They're going to rebuild their lives.
Another school district would take them in.
Yes, yes, and it's happened. And now it's just like, well, you know, our houses are okay, but now it's all psychological. There's this the you know what that it's like keeps cropping up here, everywhere. What do we do? So wow, I hate it. But it certainly motivated me to learn more of how to work with people online, how to connect with people. And I do like that it sort of forced me into a reality check. So that's the good thing about this, I guess. Some good is going to come out of something bad. It just does. Like, I believe that. Robert, what is, and I won't keep you guys too long. We can go another, let's say, do you want to go like 10 to 15 minutes? Is that good?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. Let's talk about math a minute. My favorite kind of math was eventually, I enjoyed algebra too, but it was really because of the teacher I had. The teacher I had made it clear. I don't know what happened. I feel like she just made it easier. She still taught. Like, she didn't, you know, maybe everyone's had that teacher where they kind of just lay back, and there's a lot of rabbit trails and personal stories that happens, and then you're like, I didn't learn anything in that class. Like, maybe that's happened. But this teacher, she did a good job. And I think I don't know if I made an A in that class. Making an A in math was like getting nominated for a Golden Globe or something. Wow. But so yeah. But what kind of math do you like to teach? Like, what's the best, like your favorite kind?
So I actually have a tie for favorite. I love teaching algebra and I love teaching calculus. Algebra because it really focuses on the fundamentals of math that you learned in the previous years, but building up to more complicated math. And calculus because all the applications that you can use for it are so amazing. I mean, you could figure out how fast something's falling. You can figure out how fast say, and with the whole you could find out how certain things change over time. You can find out how much area you need under a weird shape.
And
it's to me very interesting.
The people who teach math, they really feel happy. My husband is a math teacher, and I've heard. Oh, really? So it's just how it happens. So you hear them, and you're like, well, this was meant for you. Like, you need to be doing this job because I feel like math teachers, you're not going to go especially in public school. I can't speak to private school, but there's no way you can go K through 12 with awesome math teachers every single year. I didn't have that. I had a few, and I took them for granted simply because I didn't like the content. Like, I'm not going to do math when I'm older. Well, now I do it for my business, so I need some of that. But so our friend Beth has posted, we talked kind of about this, favorite parts of tutoring and tutoring online. We didn't really say favorite. We just mentioned some things that were working. So let's see, who has a favorite? I'd rather hear from you guys. Who has a favorite thing?
Favorite part of tutoring? I think my favorite part of tutoring is just making those connections with the students. I really like seeing that aha moment, like when the light bulb goes off and you can see their face when it goes off. That is like my favorite. Like, oh my God, it makes so much sense now. That is my favorite part of everything. And knowing that I helped them get there. They did the work, but I helped them get there. It's just the best feeling.
That is great. My newest thing, I may have posted this I think I posted on the group, but I've liked using a new tool and realizing it works, like Flipgrid I'm going to type that here, Flipgrid, FLIP grid. My sister mentioned it, and I guess we'd maybe talked about it, or I'd heard of it before, but it's basically like some tiny form of YouTube for kids where you can post a discussion question either by video or just typing, and they can respond. So I guess you could do that with math in the sense that kids have to explain verbally how to do a problem, because if they're showing their work, that's one way, but it's always best to hear them say it, because then they've got it here. So I like finding new tools online so that you can prove to parents, hey, this online stuff is working. Like it's a good idea, because the kids want to get on the computer. Like they want to learn how to do new things. Like I think all of my students want to use the computer. Like when I mention it, they're like, there's never any resistance. Whereas if you say, hey, get out I don't have any textbooks nearby. Get out a book, they're kind of like,
they glaze over.
they're a little slow. I'm like, page 88 now. And they're just like, oh, it feels like, a little harder. Robert, what have you enjoyed about at least the aspect of online teaching? Like, what would you think is most fun?
I think Jenny hit my answer right on the head. The aha moment was no, don't be sorry. I'm just glad that we agree on it. No, I love it. I love it when students have that aha moment. It makes me feel good about as a tutor, because I think to myself, I was able to help this student get this concept.
Yeah, well, that's the best. That's what Go ahead.
No, I'm pretty much done.
Oh, but I think if you've had a little bit of delay, sorry if I start to speak over you. I do it sometimes in the classroom too. So one more thing I wrote down.
I'm using my old computer.
Listen, you gotta. I had a Chromebook for years. I was very low tech because my family was low tech. My husband's family was low tech, and guess what? We can't really do that anymore. We can't really on a business level, we can't afford to be low tech anymore. So,
right.
Yeah, and now I'm like, I want 2 monitors. I need a nice.
Me too.
I'm like looking forward to buying things, and I'm like, but I want to be tight,
Yeah. I don't want to spend all the money, but I want to spend all the money.
Yeah, I want to save money for a vacation, but actually, I just want that technology that works so I can help more students. Like that's probably like the most important thing. So, where was I? I was going to talk about any like horror stories. I feel like I always want to hear about it because it's sort of fun things. It's fun to talk about. Horror stories, we can talk about like the past or classroom another time. But for now, I had a student when I first started the teaching business. Here, let me get this off. I didn't know what I was doing. I just was like, I can teach, so that means I can tutor privately. Well, one lady reached out to me and she said she had a 10-year-old boy. And typically I wasn't thinking about 10-year-olds. I was thinking middle to high school because that's what I taught. Well, one day I went over to his house and he was just out of the shower. His grandmother was screaming at him. He was throwing a fit. He was yelling, and not because of me, but it felt like it. He was screaming. And then he wanted help with, guess what? Math. And I was like, wait, that's not why I'm here. I can help with like super easy math or times tables. I memorized that, but that it was just kind of awkward because I thought, okay, well, I want to be able to help this kid, but he's having an emotional breakdown and I can't send him to the principal's office. I'm here in his home. Right? So it was kind of weird, but he calmed down and I worked with him. But I just remember in the moment, it felt really difficult. Have you guys had any mishaps or any kind of ordeal where you learned from it or you're like, yeah, I'm never going to do that again?
So just this week, I had I have a very soft heart. So this week I had a parent contact me. She is okay. So this was all over email. So she said she's a single mom and her student is falling very, very behind, and that she didn't have money to pay my normal fee. which around here I can't understand that. Where I'm at, there are some low-income families in the Houston area.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, can I just pay you $15 for one session and see how that works? And I said, for one session, I would do it for one session, and then we would have to reassess, because I do want to help it. I really honestly want to help as many students as I can. One session, yes, I can do that. I'm waiting to hear back from her. And then she's like, well, can you do 3 for $15?
Whoa.
Or if I can do 1 for $15, then we can reassess. And that made me feel horrible, because normally I would be like, oh, sure, no problem. But now, it's not just me. I have a business partner, and I'm, I have to pay back business, starting expenses, and, there's things now, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was just private tutoring as a side hustle, it was, just putting money in my pocket to go hang out with the girls. That was different.
Sure.
So then she came back with something else, and I don't remember what it was. And I'm like, look, I can do this. I can give you 1 free session just to see if you like me, and then we'll go from there. And she came back and she said, you know what? I hired someone else.
Oh.
After all of that. So I don't know who she got to give her 3 sessions for $15, but I hope that they're a good tutor. And I hope they're probably a high school student. Not that doesn't mean they're good. Maybe they're good, but I hope that it works out for her, is all I can say.
Sure. Yeah.
It was like a 2-day ordeal of us going back and forth. And I was like feeling horrible about myself because I wasn't helping this lady, because I was a single mom too. I know what it feels like. And not being able to, give your daughter extra stuff. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it just this one time. And then, okay, never mind then.
I find where.
Yeah, Robert, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I find that when it comes to price, you're going to pay for what you get.
Well, that's, I think, what I need to get better at explaining to a parent. I mean, I've never really had somebody come down on me for prices, but sometimes you do feel guilty for even charging, because you're like, well, public school is supposedly free, but we all know it's really not. You still have to pay for something. But you do have to protect your own time. You got the education. You have it. No matter how you got it, you're educated, and that's still worth something. And, we feel like, well, we want to have a good relationship with people. We want to have friends. We want to have clients who will recommend us to others. But sometimes you have to it's so hard to say no sometimes. But I think the more you are tutoring, the more you realize, nope, I used to let people pay me less, but you can't afford to do that anymore, because your time is more valuable.
Right. And I'm learning that the slow way, apparently. But I'm learning. So.
Yeah. Robert, what kind of, you told us a little bit about like the classroom stuff. What is something that you've been through that you realize, oh, nope, not doing it that way ever again?
So I had one project that I don't have many horror stories per se when it comes to tutoring. So I had this project that I had to that I assigned with my students, making a video on a math concept. And it was going well, except for the fact that I forgot to give them a rubric of what I expected. So I get all of these 10-second videos of just a problem. And I thought to myself, well, I kind of can't blame the students, because that was my fault.
Yeah. Oh, that's the worst. When you know it's your fault and you think, if I just put in 3 extra hours of work, like what it really,
3 extra hours
really takes, let's face it, what it really takes to be super awesome is to put in all that extra time. And especially like in the classroom, I know I keep saying that, but that's really what it takes. So yeah, if you're not being underprepared, is probably, I still struggle with that sometimes. I think, nope, I should have had more. And it's just, sometimes you spend a while preparing and the student finishes and you're like, oh shoot, they're not supposed to be done. And then you're like,
I've never been in the classroom like teaching kids, but I was a tutor trainer. And during all of my trainings, I always try to do something interactive so that they're actually using the new skill that I'm teaching them. And there were times when I'm like, oh, this is going to take them like 30 minutes. And it took them like 5. And I'm like, oh, crap. Now what? So I totally know that feeling.
Or it's the opposite, where you think, okay, I only want to spend X amount of time on this. And you're like, shoot, well, they're not done.
Yeah.
Maybe, which sometimes it's good you have something for tomorrow, but I feel like I have a lot of stuff to cover. I have some homeschool students, and we have a pretty heavy curriculum, and I teach them 4 days a week, and sometimes that's nearly almost not enough. But I think, well, we have the whole year. They're not super worried about a perfect schedule. Like, hey, if you're not done, like their mom understands. She's not expecting you better finish these books by Christmas or else. It's not like that. But sometimes I feel there's just a lot of guilt that happens, and it's kind of hard to overcome that guilt. It's just like teacher guilt. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You guys get teacher guilt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're coming near the end. We're kind of coming up on the hour. It felt like it's going by
really fast.
Yeah. And of course, later more people will watch, and sometimes people will get on. We can do this again where I've told people more ahead of time and they can come and answer questions. But Beth, let's see if Beth, is she still on here? She said, never will I again not watch the whole video before the session, because sometimes the video that you wanted to show.
It's not what you thought it was going to be.
Okay, I'm thinking like, oh, she gets tutor guilt too. I was thinking like there were days if you can show a video, so, yeah, you click, and if there's like a bad word in it, oh man, teacher guilt. And like, sorry, even though the kids are totally cool with it, they love it actually. Mm-hmm. I've never had anyone say, you showed this and now I'm in trouble, I'm going to tell my mommy. It's never like that.
Yeah.
Oh no.
You street cred.
All right. What else would you guys like to discuss? Anything new that's come up? Anything at all?
I'm just trying to wrap my head around this whole like being a businesswoman thing, being a business person thing. Like it's different. Like it's a different mindset than just being a tutor. Like I understand the tutoring thing. I've been doing it for 15 years, but having another layer on top of it, it's different. And I'm so glad that we have each other.
I don't know. How long have you been sort of on your own with teaching, Robert?
So on my own, okay, that's weird.
It's delayed. You can type it in there, I think.
Hello?
So you've been on your own for how long? Well, we can keep talking until you're ready. We'll on the space. There's no problem.
So I've been tutoring since I've been tutoring off, and actually let me type it in here.
So
I mean,
sorry, Robert, you just keep going. Yeah, so I've done this for 2 years, but I had some teachers say, oh, you can make a lot of money in tutoring, and others were kind of just like, even though those people complained about teaching, they're still like, I'll never leave teaching. Like they would never dare, especially, I don't know if it's like a Southern thing or what, because like I live in Georgia. It's just like people don't want to take risks. And the older they get, the less likely they are to take a risk. I've lived abroad. I've, done it. I'm not really that afraid to do things, but the money aspect is super important to me. It's like, well, I'm not going to take out this enormous loan and do something, but I'm going to start with what I can afford and move up from there. So that was really important to me. But I thought maybe marketing myself was going to be too difficult. So I started doing VIP Kid. And then I was still doing driver's ed in the summer. And I thought, I want to make sure I'm making more money than I did in the traditional classroom, but it was killing me doing all of those things. And I thought, how about you just try working on the tutoring business? And then I thought, nah, nobody wants English tutoring. They want math. They want science. That's where people struggle because no one gets it except the smarties. And turns out, no, it's wonderful when people say, no, I need help with reading and writing. I'm like, you do? I got you. No problem. What did Beth say here? The students. Okay, can you guys see the chat? You're able to click on it.
Oh, I have you full screen, so I can't.
Okay. They complain about it, but they don't do anything to change it. She's talking about former people that you've worked with. Has anybody? Okay, I promise. Last thing. Has anybody had some naysayers when it comes to teaching online like this?
Yes. So I had family members who said, I can't believe you're doing this. I mean, I didn't quit my day job. I still have my day job. So nothing has really changed for me except that I don't have any free time. But they, my goal is to quit my day job because I just had a birthday. I'm getting older, we'll say.
No.
And I want to, it's time for me to work for someone other than someone, to work for myself. Because, I have ideas of how it should be. And not that my school isn't doing it correctly. They're just not doing it the way I think it should be.
Efficient is probably the word that one of the words you would use. It's never really efficient enough when it's someone else.
Right.
It's not your style.
Right.
And once you're comfortable enough with your craft, your content, you're like, well, I know what works. And sometimes you're doing what you're told. You get tired of that. You just do.
Yes.
What about you, Robert? Anybody say, don't do that, stay in school?
So I had thought about opening this about 2 years ago, and I had a few family members tell me, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." And when I asked them why, they wouldn't give me a good reason, but they would just say, "Don't do it."
Because they wouldn't do it.
Exactly.
Right.
They don't understand.
Exactly.
People usually don't want you to do what they don't understand. Yeah, I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and my family didn't know how to support me in that. They're like, "What is that?" I was a mass communication major in undergrad, and people are like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Well, people, they like to get in your business or give their opinions, but yeah, it took me a while to get confident enough to even do this at all. I was just like, let me do what works. And no one was hiring a few years ago, so I had to keep learning new things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on and talking to me about online tutoring and teaching and all that. There's so much more. I feel like just when I think I'm going to run out of ideas, there's so much more to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's helpful for you guys, so I don't mind. I think it's fun to make videos for people who actually want to watch them. At first, I thought I want to make videos about travel. Can't really travel that much right now, so I'll stick to teaching. So, all right. I'm going to go ahead and end unless you guys have any other shout out. I see you've been putting I can switch this. Everybody's put their website. If you're watching this, please check out Robert's website. Check out Jenny's website. Everybody shout out the name. Jenny, go first. What's the name of your website?
It's ysciencetutoring.cc.
Why CC?
Because it was cheaper than .com.
Ah, okay, nice. Robert, what about you?
It's www.mainstreettutors.com.
And by the way, I love Maine. We went one time. I want to go back. Awesome. All right, guys, thanks so much.
Couldn't recommend it more other than the winner.
Well, I'll come back maybe. All right, you guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.